Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name's Gary Fowler, and I'm the host of GSD Presents Silicon Valley in AI and Tech. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 17 startups under my belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. And also, a month and a half ago, we sold Yva to Vizier. They acquired Vizier. They acquired Yva. So Vizier is a Canadian company. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. So today I've got an incredible friend, a great biotech entrepreneur, a medical doctor, former investment banker. I mean, you talk about the wide background. Shalabh Gupta is a physician by training and background. He found his passion in bringing new technologies to market, ultimately to help patients, physicians, and of course, society. He finds novel medicines, novel diagnostics, and healthcare technology solutions that are either underappreciated or in the early stages of development and brings them to an entirely new world of investors, of a team, and partners to be able to make this world a better place. So with that, I'd like to bring my friend Shalabh on. Hi, Shalabh. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Gary. Thank you for having me.
So I have a question for you. How in the world do you go from, being a doctor and working in the hospital, New York University, Grossman School of Medicine, you did your residency and internship. And what happened? Like one day you flipped the switch and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Does that how to happen? You happen to be in the middle of something and all of a sudden you said, I want to change my life. How does that work?
So, physicians, as a physician, we are all trained to take care of patients. And our goal, ultimately, if you think a bigger picture, goal is to help people, help them better, change their quality of life, help them with treatment. As I was doing my training, Gary, I came across a few different ideas. I worked in internship in ICU setting. I had ideas on different devices, different catheters, things that can make people's life better. But as I continued my training, I realized that coming up with an idea is only one part of the equation. You need more than an idea. A lot of people say this is the best idea ever. As you know, anyone could have founded Amazon, but no one else did. Jeff Bezos created Amazon. Anyone else could have come up with a car battery, but Tesla was founded by Elon Musk. Took longer time, but they are where they are. So idea in itself is not valuable or useful. You need more than an idea. And that realization led me to branch out of being a physician, but to do something that affects a lot more people. As a physician, I can take care of a few thousand patients, few hundred patients, maybe several thousand patients in the course of my career. But what we do today affects millions of people, and not just in the US, not just in a place where I'm practicing medicine, but across the world.
So, you've seen a lot. So I'm just curious. So, when you were working with patients, it's kind of like a startup. Like patients have instincts to live or die. I mean, and they give up or don't give up. How important is that, by the way? I'm just really curious. You've seen people die, right? How is it does the will to live important, Shalab? Like, really, is it mean that much?
I think this is a very common question that, as you know, there is a placebo effect wherein if it tells a patient that you're going to get better and people feel better, they get better. And there is also a contrary to a placebo effect, which is nocebo effect, where we tell you whatever I'm going to do will not help you. I think as a society, we play too much emphasis on individual, risk profile. But what I can tell you 100% that no patient is similar to other patient. In other words, if a patient comes to us or comes to me as a physician, I have no way to be able to tell them I can give them probability, but for a patient, if they end up in having overall longevity for 6 months and that patient dies, for him or her, that probability is 100%. So the challenge is that how do you communicate and communicating to patients in a empathic manner, in a humane manner? That is something which is not always there because physicians, on one hand, they go through the training to take care of patients. On the other hand, the way our system works is everything about documentation, putting the filling of this checkbox there,
Oh yeah,
filling
yeah,
of
yeah.
that
That's
checkbox
the
there.
thing. And that's the thing. I know when I was at Stanford, everything was about percentages. Everything. I'd never been around a situation they would talk about, well, let the percentage of this not working, there's a 5% chance or whatever. I mean, it was like crazy. And I take it that's because of liability issues, right? They don't want to have the liability. So they're giving you percentages in case, worst case scenario, right?
Right. Just being able to comfort a patient, being able to help them understand that this probability may be 10% that there is some wound they have. I took care of patients after cardiac, an example. Every red wound that looks like red is not inflammation, it's not infection. It could be inflammation, it could be they just came out of surgery and their body is healing. But as you pointed out, I think the challenge we have is that we give too much information to our patients which they don't know how to interpret, but we have lost touch with being a compassionate, having empathy, to being able to talk to people. And part of it is, as you said, about liability, but part of it is also that our system does not allow physicians to talk to patients. It's more about doing procedures, more about filling the checkbox. So that was one of my biggest challenge of practicing medicine. And I think a system has to change in order for people to be able to give better care.
Do you think? Do you think that? Um, so you have the placebo effect. Is it better to give patients hope, or is it better to talk about probabilities? You know what I mean? Because I'll tell you a direct example, Shalabh. This is just me, right? My father was in the hospital, and this one doctor came in, and he was having some problems. I mean, he's 89 years old, but they told me he was going to die 3 years before that within 7 days. I mean, literally, that's what the doctor told me. But, he's lucky if he makes another 7 days. Well, my father, one of the things that happened with me is that I bought him a puppy. I told him, I'll buy you a basset hound. I would tell him anything at that point. I just wanted to make him happy. And he looked at me and he said, "You promise?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, Dad." He said, "I want a brown and white female because they're nicer." Well, the point is, what happened is from that day forward, he started to get better, Shalom. They said he would never walk and talk again, and he walked and talked. In fact, he started bitching again. My father had a nice habit of, get complaining. And he started bitching. And so he walked and talked, and he would take his dog for a walk, and he would walk down the road, and that's how we got him out there. And then once I took him home from I had him in the nursing home for just a few weeks, and I brought him home and brought nurses to his house. And all of a sudden, because he had familiar settings and he had his dog, he thought everything was normal again. And his dementia that he had a bit of dementia, and it started to go away. He started to become normal again. And so the point is, I think that, in my opinion, part of it is believing that you can do it, and just like in a startup, visualizing it and getting the shit done, right? And with my father, I saw it. They said he would never walk. He walked. They said he would never talk. He talked. In fact, I have a video I played yesterday. I put on my Facebook page for Father's Day of my father talking to me about when I was a kid, right? So the point, it's really interesting. So, you transition, you went down through medical school, you moved over to doing investment banking. So was it interesting for you? When you moved over to the investment banking side, was that like exciting? As exciting as, I mean, a doctor, you're like the king, right? You're like God coming in. People they're like little sheep, right? And they'll do it like lambs. They'll do anything you tell them. If you say, "Listen, you need to do this," you could tell them anything. You need to take 10 aspirin. You can tell them anything. They would do it, right? So, but then when you move into investment banking, it's a little bit different world, right? How is that mental transition for you? Going from this godlike status over, or was it the same? Or the investment bankers like God too?
So, one of the things that you talked about, Kerry, is about having a vision and having it not only for the company, but also for yourself. My vision was not to do A, B, or C. My vision was to be involved in something that eventually starts to affect people's life, as in helping people. So, investment banking and financial services was a way to get a different set of skills. I never envisioned that for the rest of my life I'll become a stock analyst and remain that. So I found it was a way to get a skill set, understand what it takes for, if you create innovation and nobody really cares, if you create innovation and you can't sell it, it's of no use. So Gary, to me, that was a part of the journey. It wasn't the permanent destination. And I've done many different things in life, and I couldn't tell you that it was all planned. Some of them was serendipity. We all love to tell you that it was all planned, that I went to work for an investment bank and then went to work for Genentech. It was not this way. But one thing was very clear, and one thing was always in back of my mind, that I wanted to be part of a solution that can help a lot more people. And that solution means a device, that's great. If that solution means a drug, that's great. If it's a diagnostic, that's great. I was less focused on what the specific solution is, but more focused to gain broad set of skills. And that came to help me. And today I run a public company. It's very useful.
So, you use the same analytics skills that you have, skills that you have as a doctor for your company. Do you look at it the same way as a scientist, or how is it? You know?
So I'm trained in internal medicine, then went to do residency in a physical medicine rehab and fellowship in cardiopulmonary. But a physician is ultimately, if you think about a physician, they are trying to diagnose a person. If it is a diagnosis that you don't know, you go through a trying to identify. So as you know, there is a physical examination called HMP, history physical examination. So history of a patient helps you to identify what a probable cause is. Then you look at symptoms and then you do the testing. All of them help you to come up with a hypothesis that you can then give the treatment to the patient for. Same thing goes in the company setting. Gary, when I think about a company, I think about it solving a problem. And that problem, it has to be solved within the constraint of a specific time, a specific money, and outcome. The situation is slightly different here because in patient setting, also you have to think about can this patient afford it, not just economically, but you don't want to give for example, a knee replacement to a person who cannot undergo a knee replacement because of their cardiac condition. Same thing goes for starting a company, that you have to think about different parameters, but eventually there are a lot of skills that carry, that is being a physician or a stock analyst versus running a company. I call it a transferable skill set that you can use them.
Got it. Interesting. And so just a question for you: how much? So I have a couple of my friends are pretty high level physicians, right? But how much? So how do you know what a good physician, right? And there's a difference. There's a person who graduated top in the class and the bottom of the class, right? But how do you go down through, and then it's kind of like with an entrepreneur too, right? How do you know a successful entrepreneur? But a doctor, it's really interesting. How do you know what kind of person would you? So, Shalabh, let's say you have a cardiac problem. How do you know who to go to, right? How do you figure that person out? I'm just curious about it. I've wondered, like, do you go to the best, the number one in that hospital, and say, listen, I want the chief of cardiology? Or do you go to your friends and ask them? Or what do you do? What's the secret? Tell us the secret sauce.
Gary, what the problem is, if you have if a person, not you, but a person has a valve replacement that needs to be done, and let's say there is some other complication with the valve replacement, want to go, if you can go to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, NYU in New York City, you want to go to the best surgeon. But on the other hand, because the surgeon is operating on you and you've been doing this for quite some time, they have experience, they have know-how, it's a skill set, it's a dexterity, it's a physical skill set. On the other hand, there are times where you also need to have someone who could have empathy. So, for example, as you talked about your father, if your dad is undergoing dementia, you want to have a unbiased geriatric physician who has some empathy, because this takes a much longer gradual time frame. So you want to be able to have someone who can understand father's situation, who can understand what your father's specific requirements are. But overall, I call it two or three ways you can think about it. One is a technical skill, that a surgeon could be very in surgery, but may not have empathy, or I call it bedside manner.
Now,
So
have
that's the
you met
second part
those
of it.
people, Shalabh, who are really good, but they're like divas?
They're not like that, and unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So you want to have someone who has a good bedside manner. Bedside manner do not mean just bedside, but somebody who can take care of patient and make truly physicians have a role in the past and in many eons ago. It used to be like you are a healer. So you want to have somebody who has a technical skill. If you're doing a surgery, then you say, well, okay, if the person is rude to me, I don't care because I'm going to go through surgery and I can move on. But in ideal world, you want to have somebody who has a great technical skill and also empathy. Um, that would be the best combination because you don't want to go to somebody who was doing the first time in their career, though somebody has to start doing first time in their life, but you may not want to be them.
Yeah, I see
And
you touched your nose there for a second. You know the deal. So, but
no,
the
I
most,
mean,
but, Shalabh, most people don't know, right? So they don't. I mean, you come into a doctor. Doctor's a doctor for people. It's like binary. It's really interesting. It's kind of like a yes or a no. You go in, a person's a cardiologist, and you don't think about the rest of the story, right?
there is a lot of online information is available, Gary, today. People have hospitals are forced to create more transparent monitoring. If you go to a particular hospital, if they have more risk of infection, they have to disclose it. So there are more resources today than they used to be 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So a lot more information out there. The challenge, though, I would agree with you, it's hard to figure out. Like I said, there is information, as you talk about, in obesity. There's a lot of information. The question is, how do you make sense of it?
Well, and I got to ask you about this because I don't know if we've spoken about it, but these concierge physicians that are out there, Shalab. Now you get somebody that's a concierge physician that charges you, $6,000 or $10,000 a month or a year, right? Are they that better? I mean, are these concierge physicians, are they at the top of their game?
I can't comment on the physician's quality, but I think a patient interaction is a lot better, Gary, because they are not. As a physician, one of the reasons that I decided to not practice medicine at some point was that, you know, um, it depends on what type of medicine you practice. But a physician, if it's an initial visit, you get 45 minutes to take care of patients. If your repeat visit or follow-up visit is a 25 minutes. The part is that a physician is supposed to talk to patient, but the moment patient starts talking, physician starts to interrupt. And on an average, remember the stats, and this is not new one, so older statistics might have changed, but on an average, a well-care visit, a physician interrupts patient every 18 seconds.
Oh
It
my
means that
God,
you
that's
can't even
amazing.
you can, you can't talk to a physician and let physician be able to hear anything. And part of the problem is not with the physician. I know you will think that I have bias, but our system encourages to keep documenting. If I didn't document that I asked you about your bowel movement as an example, probably is very real, but if I didn't ask you about sleep and a bowel movement, if I don't put those check boxes, that I never took care of that part. So concierge medicine allows you, the incentives are different. If you go as a Gary Fowler to a concierge physician, they are not being judged on the same metric. Therefore, they have a time to hear you. Most often than not, my patients wanted to talk to them about things that bother them. That, for example, that a patient would say, "My wife died uh, last month. I feel depressed, doctor. I don't feel like medicine." If you could spend with that patient 5 minutes or 10 minutes of your time, help them understand that this is a natural response, that they could do a few things that
Hmm.
could help them alleviate pain that they're going through, that would be helpful. And that part of medicine, that's what we go to medical school for, is gone or is taken away from us.
Yeah, I mean,
If
that's
a but
Shalab, just to interject a point, I mean, there's another part of it, right? Because most of the time, these concierge physicians are generally high level doctors that have had, they're well known. They've written a lot of hundreds of articles, and maybe they're chief of surgery, but they have the context. The thing is, if you go to one of them, they have the context to get you in, so they know who the best person gastro
that's right.
gastro doctor, right? They know who to send you to because they're their friends, and they're not going to say no to you because you've been referred to somebody. It's like sales, right? And the reason I'm bringing it back is because that's kind of like what happens in a startup, isn't it? You're going out, you want to meet the high level people, you need to have the same kind of network to connect the dots. Now, I know being on Wall Street, being a doctor, you've created a number of successful companies. So, how in the world, what in your mind helps to create these successful companies?
There is not a one answer, so I'll get through a few points here and I'll try to outline certain things. But one of the key components, Gary, for any company, any idea is that you need to have a few key and what they are in my mind as following. Number one, it has to be big enough market. It cannot be a small, as an example, I'll tell you, I was at NYU, there was a physician or surgeon who came up with a scalpel that will not nick surgeon's hand. But that may be a big market, but not big enough for somebody to make an investment. Maybe, maybe not. Just giving an example, big enough market. The second part is a competitive advantage. In a biotech or drug industry, the competitive advantage is primarily focused on IP, intellectual property, patents. Sometimes it is also know-how of manufacturing, how you
Yeah,
manufacture a particular drug. So
yeah,
that's a second part, which is a big enough competitive advantage. The third thing is, Gary, if I am the 10th player, if the car battery electric car companies, there are so many of them out there. In 2022, somebody comes and starts a next electric car company. They may have the great idea, but the market said there are a lot of so competitive landscape, what it is today, but not only what it is today, but also what it will be in 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And the reason I say that because in any industry, biotechnology, any drug you're developing, it takes several years to get to the market. So you have to think about competition today, but also think about what the competitive landscape would look like on the road. The next thing is that having a specific goal, a specific market, a smaller market segment in mind. Biotech companies can do large, but in order for a company to succeed, they need to have, or company needs to have a product, a smaller market where you can show proof of concept. Tech companies call it MVP, minimal viable product. In biotech, you have to have some sort of data that shows that if there is a broad technology, a platform technology, it works in that specific indication. The challenge happens, one of the challenges happen, I don't mean this happens to everyone, but one of the challenges for entrepreneurs is that you have so many ideas and you say, I can also do this, I can also do that. And that, if you're on the other side as an investor, that starts to scare people because they say, you have so many challenges to deal with. And if you're not focused, you will not succeed. So having a very specific market where you focus on. Then the other part is that Gary, understanding, as you pointed out, understanding your ecosystem. If you are running a biotech company, if you're running a medical device, one constant theme about running any company is no matter what your business plan is going to change. So it's not that you don't have to have a business plan, but you have to be flexible. And the example I'll give you, an analogy, is not my own analogy, so I borrow from someone else. But an analogy I'll use is the one is airline pilot. If a plane is going from San Francisco to New York City, Newark Airport, it has a specific flight path, but if there is a headwind or tailwind, if the weather is not good, you, as an airline pilot, you have to be able to keep changing the course. And the course, you may want to get to Newark in 5 hours, it may take 5.5 hours. In that case, you have to account for the amount of fuel you need, where you're going to land. So it's an iterative process. Early on in my career, I created a business plan. I went to pitch to some people. I not only got the part that people wanted to invest, but also they gave feedback, and you iterate that plan, you iterate that business plan, and go next time make it better. It's an iterative, continuously iterative process. There are two other ingredients that I can talk about, and I'm sure there are many I've missed. But one other part is that it's a team sport.
hmm
No matter who you are, no matter what background you have, Gary, you need a team. Team is the key component of it. You get to a certain point, you have a good enough business plan. Let's say you have the money, you still need people who can work together, a cohesive team to execute. And any business, Gary, you need investors. You need people who believe in you, and that is what creates the whole ecosystem. And investors, many of them will give you constructive feedback. Not only that if they are interested in investing, they can give you money, but they also may not give you money, but they can give you feedback. And um, you have to pick and choose which feedback you can implement. Some feedback, no, you should have 100,000 customers to sell if you're selling a widget company, as in healthcare IT, but you may not have 100,000 customers today. And that way you say, well, Shalabh, I got this feedback, I can't implement. But then you know that to this type of investors, you need 100,000 customers and that traction. So there are different types of feedback. Some of them you can't implement them today because it will be wishful thinking to have. But to be able to understand and learn from doing it, not just to have a very rigid idea, is the key.
No, it's amazing. So you were talking about the team. Now, so what's one characteristic of a team player that's important for you? So you're going to hire somebody. What's the
Yeah,
one characteristic that you look at?
it's hard to say, but I will tell you if I have to pick only one thing, it is a passion. I
Hmm.
want somebody who is passionate about what they're doing. I don't even care if you're passionate and completely opposite for you than mine. I would rather have you than somebody who is struck shoulder. What do you think about this? I don't know. I would not. I can't work with people
Yeah,
who
well,
have just no opinion.
it's not
And
easy building a startup, right? And you have to see people like this. It's like boring, isn't it? And they take
yeah,
away.
I want to have somebody who's yeah. I want to have people who believe in something. And because the passion is one key, Gary, that helps you. It's like an antidote. It's like an antibody to the disappointments that come along the way. There is no company, there is no startup, any company. You have a plan, you will encounter obstacles. They're just part and parcel. And what helps you overcome that obstacle is passion. It's not experience. It's not 20 years at this big company, 10 years at. I appreciate that, but if you're not passionate, you can't bring your best to the company, your best to the team. And I think, Gary, that's in my mind is number one factor. So as I said, I look for experience. I look for the right skill set. Sure, if you're passionate but you have no understanding, that's also not very helpful. But to come back, all things equal, passion is one that helps people to build something. And passion in the right way. It's not being passionate and being reckless, but being passionate and being able to contribute to a problem.
No, I agree with you. I had lunch slash dinner with Andrew Straczynski in Palo Alto. Andrew Straczynski is a right-hand man of Rupert Murdoch. And Carl Page, Larry Page's brother, was there, the co-founder of Google's brother. And so we had this dinner at this Indian restaurant. And I was sitting next to Andrew. I had a couple of wines, so I was a little loose. And I said to him, "What's one thing?" He said, "I've studied 3,000 entrepreneurs around the world." And I said, "Well, what's one thing that each one of them has in common?" Because we were talking about Murdoch, and I said, "Geez, he's married to this Chinese woman, and then he got divorced, and he's been up and down and in and out. I mean, doesn't it bother him? You know what I mean?" He said, "Well, there's one thing." Shalabh, what do you think is the one thing he said that he sees in all entrepreneurs when he looked at it? They did an analysis of 3,000. What's one characteristic that they see in the most successful entrepreneurs?
I don't know the answer, but I'll guess if they're passionate about what they do. And the passion is not about selling the company and making the money. And I always say to the entrepreneurs that if you think there's a way to make money, you're in the wrong business. Um, but passion, being very, very focused on what you do,
Yeah,
and you live and die with that.
and he told me, passion's one of them, but the most number one thing was amnesia. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because they never let the past hold them back. Never." He said, they never talk about the past. And I know from, a couple billionaire friends that I have, they just don't talk about the past. They only talk about what's happening today and what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And they don't if they have a problem, they don't let it get them down. They just move around it. They don't talk about it. It's amazing. And so it's just interesting. So amnesia is really important, right?
I would just modify that statement just slightly. So you don't have to be stuck in your past, but you can learn from your past. You can learn the things that worked and learn from them because,
Sure.
as I said, obstacles, making mistakes is a part and parcel. Nobody ever gets it right the first time around, second time around. Even in the big companies, Jeff Bezos famously quotes that I've made millions of dollars, billions of dollars worth of mistake, but some mistakes that worked that created Amazon to where it is today. But going back to this part, Gary, you don't have to be stuck with your past because everybody fails. But the question is that can you learn from your mistake? Can you make it better next time?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So we're coming up to the top of the show. One final question, and what are your recommendations for new entrepreneurs? What are some of the recommendations you would have for them? People just getting started out today, and some of the challenges with the financial markets the way they are, et cetera. What would you say to them?
I'll just outline a few of them in no particular order. Find a problem big enough that you can address. Find something that is a competitive advantage. Don't create something that is a me too or slightly better. Competitive advantage, understand the landscape where you're going for, have a specific narrow focus, create a solution that will solve that problem, find the investors who believe in you, work on something that you truly care about, money or no money aside, and you're willing to spend your nights and day on it, or else you can't succeed. Build a team, raise money from the investors, but also get good investors who can give you feedback, not only in terms of giving you the money, but also what the product could look like. Uh, and Gary, ultimately the part that you and I talked about is have a passion, have a team that believes in you, that believes in each other. Because it's not the question the CEO and the founder is the only person the team believes in, and they can't work with each other. Then you have to be there every single minute to execute every single project, every single plan.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you got to know how to, you got to hire people a lot smarter than yourself, right? The smarter the people are, the better it is, especially if you get them on
Right.
board. Shalabh, I want to thank you very much for coming on my show today. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to connect?
LinkedIn is one medium that I use fairly often. Otherwise, reach out to me in any, Unicisive has an email address. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me.
That's great. Shalabh, I want to thank you for joining my show today. To all my audience out there, my name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Stay tuned for another exciting edition of GSD Presents. I'll be back again Thursday. Shalabh, thanks for taking time out of your busy
Thank you,
schedule.
Gary.
To all my audience out there, stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy. I'll see you soon. Take care. Love you. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank you.
you.